It all obviously worked out in the end for you. I want to say first that I'm here with Howard Suber, who made the UCLA, longtime UCLA professor, made the wonderful docuseries, The Power of Film, which we have on TCM. Thank you. It's really good. I think it's a must for TCM fans. It's streaming now on Max. At the last minute, he couldn't make it, so I'm stepping in for him. But please check out the Power of Film, which was, you know, I mean, this sounds now trite, but it was powerful, it was moving, yeah. I mean, as both Steven and I, watching it independently, and amazing that you did, were taking notes.
Yeah, I actually I had what you have in your lap right now, watching the entire series.
Yeah, and then I'm taking the notes, I'm like, well, and for what am I taking these notes? But, you know, but again, it imprints it into my head. So I want to ask a couple of questions that I know Howard wanted to get to. I do want to ask you about the casting of the character of Roy Neary, the electrician, because I've interviewed Richard Dreyfuss many times, and he loves to tell this story. And Richard loves to tell stories, and in the process, maybe gets a little bit carried away, just to juice the story a little bit. But you were working on Close Encounters while making Jaws, correct?
Yes.
So you're working on it, you're crafting it, writing it, and you're shooting it on Martha's Vineyard, right? You're making it. And in his version, he knows that you want to cast other people, and that he would sort of walk by your office and disparage in a playful way other people. Like he'd walk by and he's like, Al Pacino is no such human. Dustin Hoffman lacks boyhood wonder. You know, is any of that true?
It's all true. It's all true. Richard is a good storyteller, but Richard tells the truth, and that's exactly what happened. You know, Richard was right there. We were working every day. You know, we were sort of marooned on Jaws for over 7 months, about 5.5 of those months on Martha's Vineyard before coming to Catalina Island off the coast here. And so we spent a lot of time with each other, and I was working on the script while we were making Jaws, and it's exactly what happened, because I had different people in mind to play the different parts.
Steve McQueen, was that enough?
I went to Steve. He read the script, and he was great. He read the script, and he invited me up to his beach house to talk about it, and he opened up a can of Colt 45 beer, and I wasn't a drinker. He didn't understand why I wouldn't drink the beer he put right in front of me, but we sat there, and he told me how much he really liked the script, and then he told me that he was not going to be Roy Neary, and I asked him why, and he said, interesting, he said, because at the very end, Roy Neary breaks down, he's crying at the end, and I don't do that.
Wow.
And I said, no, I said, I'll cut it out. And he said, no, because when I read your script, it made me cry that moment. You can never cut that out.
It's interesting. The way I read it, and obviously you know better, being in the room with the Colt 45s, the undrunk Colt 45s, I read it as that he couldn't cry on cue, but you were saying he doesn't. Like that's not something he was interested in doing on camera.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's very good. That's interesting. And then those other guys, you know, the usual suspects of brilliant actors at the time, Pacino, Hoffman, Hackman, Nicholson, they were all in your head, maybe?
Maybe in my head. A couple of them, I don't want to name who, you know, didn't, you know, respond to it. A few of them did, and we met, but didn't want to make the picture. It was a pretty far out idea for a movie in those days anyway.
Sure.
It was pretty crazy.
And is this for you the way, as audience members who see films they love and identify with and connect with on an emotional level, and then afterwards it's sort of impossible to imagine anyone else? Do you now have that with Richard?
I do. You know, I realize, because I really, you know, Richard and I sort of identify with each other, and in a sense, when Truffaut makes movies, he kind of casts himself. And what I didn't realize was I was going to wind up casting myself to play, because that is how I identify with that kind of a character, and I wrote it from what I know. And it turned out that when Richard did the film, I really recognized a kind of kindred spirit. And I apologized at some point to Richard after about shooting 20, 30 days on Close Encounters that I kept him, you know, I kept him in the wings for so long. I don't feel bad about that anymore.
Things worked out just fine for Richard, who's a big supporter of TCM. It's been so wonderful to us. So his wife is played in the film by Terry Garr, who's so great, and Meryl Streep, who was an emerging actress, was under consideration. I think she read for it, right? No, didn't read?
Not that I remember.
Not that you remember. You might not recall that. Tell me why you like Terry Garr.
Because she was funny.
Did you see her in a commercial?
I saw her in a commercial. She made me laugh in a commercial, selling soap or something.
Coffee.
Coffee, something that I don't drink. I don't drink coffee, so whatever she was selling, I wasn't buying it, but I was really wanting to meet her for my movie.
So you can find that commercial, Terry Garr. Just Google Terry Garr coffee commercial. It is 30 seconds long, and I totally see why. Like there is a likability, authenticity that you do not associate with commercials. But I sort of believe all of the story, why she makes this coffee and why she likes it.
Well, she witnesses her husband having what you might call a psychotic break. and when this is happening, I didn't want, the character, her character Ronnie, to just be despairing and to fall apart and to be dark about his darkness. I wanted somebody that could figure out, how can I be normal in the middle of my husband melting down? What can I do to just sort of make fun of it, make light of it, until I really realized that I don't know how to handle anything like this. So I needed somebody with that sort of lift of humor.
Yeah, and how many people here have not seen Close Encounters?
Oh, wow.
It always amazes me, although overwhelming majority have. So, again, we won't spoil anything, but this next question will reveal something about the movie, but it's sort of why I think perhaps the biggest reason, and Howard was going to ask it, of why Close Encounters means so much, why it stands out, what made it different. As you know from watching many of these movies, you remade one of them, War of the Worlds. Generally, movies involving aliens involve a threat, and a threat that is then realized, right, with devastation. You had a very different take here. What were you thinking behind that? Why was that your approach to a story about aliens on Earth?
Well, I think, look, as a kid, I was influenced very much by the movies, science fiction movies, westerns, but I was also very influenced by my parents. And my dad, one day, woke me up in the middle of the night. I must have been 6 or 7 years old. We were living in New Jersey. And it was summertime, and he brought me out in the dead of night. I was scared. I didn't know, why does a father come into a room and say, come with me in the middle of the night? Put me in a car, drove me to this park, and there were a lot of people in the middle of the night on picnic blankets in the dark with some low-powered battery-operated flashlights. And they were laying down looking at the sky, and my dad wanted me to see the Leonid meteor shower. And so when I had a chance to suddenly, develop an awareness that we are not alone. When you look up at the sky, your imagination immediately looks up there and says, there's something happening out there that we maybe not fully understand here, and not just in the area of physics. And I became romanced by the sky. The night sky was a romantic thing that I didn't look up there and say, death is going to come raining down on us from some Martian, invasion. I really looked up and thought, if anybody does bother to come hundreds, thousands, millions of light years to find us here, it is going to be a peaceful communion
and magical, right? I mean, almost like surreal, which is sort of what I see in Dreyfus, this wonderment, the wonderment of a little boy looking up at the sky.
Yeah, the character at Dreyfus is very much like the character of the little boy who was played by a 3-year-old named Carrie Guffey, who's Melinda Dillon's son in the movie. Dreyfus, his character and Barry's character, Roy's character, Barry's character are the same character.
So this 3-year-old boy, Barry in the movie, played by this kid, Gary Duffy, his face is unbelievably expressive. What sophisticated directorial tools do you use to induce those expressions from this young child?
You know, look, I didn't say your dog is dead. Anything like that to get him to cry or get him to laugh. What I did was manipulative, but it was effective. When he had to look out the screen in porch to look at the sky because something was coming out of the sky, and he was looking at this with great fascination, I simply said, I have a present for you. First I said, roll, and we rolled the camera. And I said, I have a present for you, and I got up on the ladder, so it was above his sight line, and I had a gift wrap present, and I slowly started to unwrap the present. One piece of paper, one ribbon string at a time, and his eyes were salivating. I removed the lid of the box, and I brought a little toy car out for him. And I said, cut, next shot.